Between 1982 and 1987, Jean Wren Productions supplied to Butlins Holiday World a pantomime group called the Push Button Click. Author and fan Will Hadcroft was in his mid-teens when these cliques were entertaining thousands of children across Britain during the summer seasons. With photographs and offstage recordings, he has lovingly preserved a concept that is fondly remembered to this day. I asked him what exactly was the Push Button Click.
Well, the push button click was it kind of grew out of, I think, grew out of what was happening at the time. You know, we have these. There's a phrase in the early 80s of like push button technology. You know, It was very new and cool, and now it's very old. Now it's the digital era. So I suppose if it was to be done today, it would be the digital click.
Sort of touchscreen click.
yeah. So the push button click was kind of the title, the name was kind of capitalising on that mood of the day. It was like it was a pantomime group at all the various Butlins holiday centres. I don't think they were in every centre, but they were in most of them. And rather than presenting a pantomime the way the pantomime is, where they just come on and, you know, you've got like Jack and the Beanstalk, you've got Jack and you've got the giants and, you know, various other characters, or you might have Aladdin and you've got the genie in the lamp, and so you've got this standard formula of the good guy, the bad guy, the damsel who he falls in love with and saves, and you've got the older female character, the dame, or a man, the man playing the dame, and you have like a fool like Buttons who is silly and makes the children laugh. So that format, they took that and mixed it with a different format. They had the push button click were this kind of group that went on adventures. So you'd go to the theatre at Butlins, they'd come on at the start. And you had three characters: Push Button Pete, who was the leader of this clique. I mean, it's when you see it written down, Push Button Click, it's clique, really. Right. I don't know if it's a play on words or they just didn't know it's clique. But so you've got Push Button Pete, who was a kind of Fonz type character from Happy Days. You know, he had the slick back hair and the
cool dude.
Leather jacket. Hey, you know, he's one of those sort of characters. Although I don't think he started off like that. It kind of became more and more like that as the years went on. Then you had the fool, who was called IQ, because he had a low IQ. And then you had the brains of the gang, this bubbly girl called Keely McGee, who I thought was her real name, but it's a character.
Who's your best mate? Who's your best mate? Young Louder, who's your best mate? Let's go! Hiya, kids!
And the other three members of the Push Button Click would play the character parts. You'd have the older woman, you'd have the young damsel, and you'd have the villain. And you saw all six of them together in the very first show, but you didn't see them in the subsequent ones because of the format. So either Push Button Pete or Keely, depending on which year it is, because it changed, invented this robot called, wait for it, Video Vera. Right? And so they wheel this thing on stage, and I've invented this robot, Video Vera, and it's 3 milk crates piled up on top of one another, sprayed silver or grey, with hoover pipes on either side for arms, and a mannequin head with a tinsel wig on the top. You know, this is its head, and like flashing lights. You know, and the woman who plays the older woman in the pantomime part of it, she gives the voice to this thing. I always remember it sounding like Margaret Thatcher. I don't know if that was deliberate, but she had this very posh voice, Video Vera.
Does it make tea in the mornings? Video Vera can do anything.
Yeah? Not bad, is it?
It talks.
I do. And will you stop calling me it?
Sorry.
It is Video Vera.
So Push Button Pete or Keely explains to the audience, we've got this robot that can take us anywhere we want to go. If you want to go back in time or into the future or onto a spaceship. So then IQ would say, well, you know, what if we wanted to go to Jack and the Beanstalk or Aladdin? you know, Arabia. So they'd say, yeah, we can go anywhere. All you have to do is put your hands on your head and say, hold on to your hats, here we go.
And of course the whole audience would do that.
So they encourage the audience to do that. They do it on stage, and then the guy at the front with the organ or the keyboard or whatever, I would say orchestra pit, but it's, you know, he's down there at the front. So he hits, you know, the synthesizer goes mad, all the lights go down, and then the strobe light sort of effect comes on, so this flickering white light, and they kind of sway about on the stage as though they're travelling through time. And the back curtain opens, and then the lights come up and the strobe light stops and the synthesizer stops, and there's the setting of Aladdin or Jack of the Beanstalk or whatever.
A really big shout, all right? You know what to do after three. A 1, 2, 3.
So then Push Button Pete becomes Jack.
Right.
Keely is one of the main female parts. IQ is the Buttons figure. So then it takes on
the traditional pantomime.
You'll have songs in there, and, you know, and then at the end of it all, when they've sorted out the giant or, you know, whatever, he'll say to the audience, I think it's time we went back to Butlins now, boys and girls. You know what to do. Hands on heads, hold on to your hats, here we go. And they wheeled on the robot, the milk crates, a pile of milk crates, Video Vera, and then they do the effect in reverse. So the strobe light comes on, the lights go down, the curtains at the back close, and then when the lights come back up, we're back in Butlins, you see. So, of course, it's all done on stage and you haven't really gone anywhere, but it feels, or it felt, whoops, kicking the microphone, it felt like you had been transported somewhere. The other thing was that they had this song, the Push Button Click song, which was Paul Goodman who wrote it. It's designed for maximum audience participation. So they teach you this song, their little anthem, if you like. So you've got this thing at the beginning where you punch forwards with your fists, push, button, click, yeah. So this rhythm comes on, this do 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 do.
It's a shame it's not video.
Yeah, well, yeah, I could do the actions.
Push, click, push, click, push, click, push, click, push, click, push, click. I'm hip, I'm cool, oh yeah, I'm me. From the slip back to the boots of my feet.
So push, button, click, yeah. So you've got the men going push, click with their fists, and the women button, yeah. So when it's put together, push, button, click, yeah, 6 times. And they'll get the audience to do this. So then he sings, I'm hip, I'm cool, and yet I'm neat. From my slick back head to the boots of my feet. King of the video, prince of the machine. What's my name? And everybody points at him, Push Button Pete.
What's my name?
And then you put your left arm or your left hip and your right and point across your tummy the other way, and then swap over and point with the other finger. You do the push button, click. You put on the style and curl up your lip. Take this advice, take this tip, get into the groove and do the push button click, you see. So all the kids are doing the pointing. Then you've got the push button click yeah bit again, only 4 times. And then they've got the 3 golden rules of the click, which the children love this, and so did I. Rule number 1, thumbs up 3 times. Fun, fun, fun to be in the click. Rule number 2, thumbs down 3 times. We don't like school. You can imagine the roof
Yes.
lifting off. Rule number 3, you know every trick. And what do you got? And you sort of wave your fingers in the air like you're conducting an orchestra. You got the push button click.
Rule number 1. Rule number 2. Rule number 3. Now every trick. What have you got?
And then into the chorus again. And then there's this bit in the middle where you go, oh yeah, and clap, oh yeah, and everyone's clapping. And then he says, I've got the brains and I've got the muscle. And Keely says, he's got electricity and I've got trouble. Give us some action, Pete, give it some stick. Give us what we want the push button click. And then the chorus to the end. The thing is, you sort of, the first night, the children don't know it unless they've been there the year before. By sort of Wednesday, so it's 2 shows a day. You've got the matinee and the evening. 2 shows a day. By then, they've kind of got the rules. So when he says rule number 2, they all go, we don't like school. They've got that. By Friday, they'd know it almost the whole thing. So when he says, I've got the brains and I've got the muscle, the actors just don't sing, you know. They've got the kids going, I got the brains, I got the muscle, you know. They know it all.
I got the brains, I got the muscle.
You come away at the end of the week thinking, that was fantastic.
And no doubt driving parents mad singing it.
I certainly did. Well, you're talking about a teenage boy who's going around with a cassette recorder, sat in the audience, thinking, I could record all this. So I recorded it and I'd be listening to it at home, you know, and boy, my mother hated that song so much.
So when did you first see them?
It was in 1982. I was 12 years old. It was the Minehead camp. Well, they called them holiday worlds later on. Butlins holiday camps became Butlins holiday worlds. And we'd done been on the monorail and the cable cars and the boating lake and the fairground and done everything that there is to do. And on the last day, I thought, I'm going to go in the children's theatre. And they did this show, the Push Button Click. And I got to the end of it, I thought, I can't believe I've been here a week and discovered this now. You know, I suppose my interest in sort of science fiction and time travel, and the idea of it not just being a pantomime, that you travel to it, you know, and the song as well. The song, I saw all the children joining in all the various bits and thought, you know, they all know this song. They've clearly done it every day, twice a day, you know, and they all. And I remember when it was my mother, my father, and my little brothers. The following year, 83, my mother and father had parted company by then, and because of that, we all went to Butlins in Pwllheli, in North Wales. And it was me, my brothers, my mother, and her friend Doreen, and her children Angela and Carl, who were teenagers. Carl was a little bit older than me. So I remember when we got there and got the brochure of what you can do, you know, and I saw it, it's Push Button Click. I remember that from last year. So I said, we've got to go and see that. Oh, you'll like it. So me and Carl, my brothers went as well, but it was predominantly me and Carl that went to every one. And there it was, exactly the same format. I remember him, he would have been 13 or 14. He was really struck with the outfits they wore on that. They wore a sort of pyjama-like, almost like an all-in-one thing with a lightning bolt down the front, the sort of zigzag lightning bolt. And I remember him being really struck by that. The thing that stands out to me about 1983 more than anything is the first time I ever kissed a lady. I'd fallen in love with Keely at age 13, and she was this bubbly blonde girl with big blue eyes, and I was completely, by the end of the week, I was besotted. And they had, the various shows that they had like a James Bond pastiche called For Your Ears Only. And they had like Aladdin and Jack and the Beanstalk, and there's one where they go into the future on a spaceship. And the last show of Friday, the Friday matinee show, was the Hunt for Captain Blood, where it'd be like a pirates thing, and then Captain Blood would jump off the stage and run up to the back of the auditorium, theatre, and then the Push Button Click and the Redcoats would say, "We're going to go and hunt Captain Blood," and they would lead however many, 100 kids and plus across the centre, chasing this guy. And all the adults would be turning around going, "What's going on here?" And then eventually they would grab him and take him to the swimming baths and throw him in, and they made him walk the plank. But after that was over, the show ended by you going back to the theatre, and they would do autographs because it was Friday. And I remember going along with my pad or whatever, and Carl was there. And we got to Keeley, and I was just absolutely dumbstruck. You know, just this beautiful creature. She would have been like in her early 20s, I guess, this girl, and I was 13. So I just said, Keeley, we really like you. And she knew what that meant, and she said, do you want a kiss on either cheek? You know, and we looked at one another, me and Carl, yeah. So we were allowed to kiss her on one apiece on either cheek. Well, that had a devastating effect on me at 13. And I can remember travelling home on the coach the following day, just thinking, Keeley, I love you.
Heartbroken.
Yeah, and I remember the following week when we got home, and the photographs were developed, the holiday photographs, and I went up to collect them. I walked into town to collect them, because I just wanted to see if the Keeley ones had turned out. So I had my, to William with love Keeley cross, and some photographs of Keeley. So that was the first time I ever kissed a girl, and it was the only time for quite a long time, actually. So that was 1983. By 84, I had the tape recorder. So we went back to Pwllheli. And this time it was my mother, my brothers and I, and my stepfather. So life had moved on in the real world. And the push button click there I remember the push button Pete was, he may have been mixed race, he certainly had a tan, but he had like a London accent. I remember that. And the guy who played IQ was this tall, thin lad, again in his early 20s, and he had the gloss back hair. But he had quite a deep voice. And they developed this catchphrase for him where he'd go, "Who's your best mate?" And everyone would shout, "IQ!" And he'd do that quite a lot. And he had this thing of that he loved lion bars, I think it was. So he'd say to one of the cast members, "Will there be lion bars there?" And so the children picked up on that. Yeah. And through the week, people would be going to the front while he was there, giving him
lion bars.
They'd go, "Oh, thank you, sweetheart." And he'd have this box with IQ's lion bars written on, and they'd be dropping. He must have done quite well out of that for the whole season.
The sight of them now.
Hi, kids!
Push button quick.
Hiya, kids! Right, are you ready for your adventure this evening? Are you sure?
And what else is from 84? 84 is also the year that Gene Wren Productions produced the Push Button Click record. So it's a 7-inch vinyl single on the Lighthouse label, which I think they invented, because I remember the code being LH001.
It's probably the only track on that.
And I saw
label.
this single record, the Push Button Click record, and it had the song Push Button Click, Push Button Pete, and then in brackets Jimmy Germain, whom I assumed was the guy on the stage who played Push Button Pete. When I got it home, it turned out I was a bit disappointed to start with, because Jimmy Germain wasn't the guy on the stage. He's somebody who sounds remarkably like Cliff Richard. So he comes on, "Hiya kids, Push Button here." And I thought, this fella's putting on a Cliff Richard voice, to be hip, cool and trendy.
"Hi kids, Push Button here. Positions everyone for the Push Button Click."
And Jimmy Germain and Jay Germain, who is his wife, did the backing vocals. And it's that song with a proper little band playing it. And the B-side, I remember, was a track called The Name's Push.
Remember my name, remember my face, the name's Push.
So that record was out. Because I had recordings that I was making, I was getting to talk to the actors a little bit older. I was 14, I felt better about approaching them. The actor who played IQ said that Gene Wren Productions had been able to interest Pebble Mill, the BBC magazine programme, and that they were selecting the best Push Button Pete and the best IQ, the best Keeley from each of the camps, to put together a version of it that could be unleashed to the country. They were going to remake the Push Button Click record with the best of the Push Button Click cast, and he'd been selected as the best IQ, and I remember him being really pleased about that. That he was going to be on the new version of the record. Sad to say, that didn't happen. The record was not remade, and they didn't go on Pebble Mill. But he was really, I remember, they picked up on it. I was really excited, and I was excited because it meant my thing, my little private thing that I loved, was going to get
was going to see it.
exposure. So I was keen on that.
Who's called the name of the group that's giving you all your fun this week? Are you going to see the Bush Band Click next year? Are you going to go home with a record and do it in your front room?
Then we get into 1985, and production values have improved a little.
Who's your best mate? Louder! Who's your best mate? Louder! Who's your best mate?
I have a photograph of this particular push button click, so it will be on the site. I remember as well that they'd started to produce push button click T-shirts, and they wore them. And I remember I ordered a badge from Gene Wren Productions, a little buttonhole badge, but I never ordered the T-shirt. I couldn't afford it at the time. It wouldn't have been much really, but what we were on as a family, I couldn't afford it. I remember going there one year and I saw this girl going to the show wearing one of these T-shirts.
Jealous.
I want a T-shirt like that. And they'd in the show, rather than it just being a sort of a keyboard, a synthesizer of the day, they now had a drummer as well. So you had live drums, and it made it sound better. It improved the sound of it. So that was the thing I remember mostly about 1985. Then we get to 86. It's all still happening as it was. The drums, the drums and the keyboard, they're all still there. But they've released a second single called PUSH. And this one, it's give me a P. And you raise your right arm and shout P, give me a U, left arm U, S. And then when it says give me an H, you raise both arms and shout push. And then he sings this verse. And it was more upbeat than the Push Button Click song, but still with all those places for children to join in.
Let's see, are they all up? All of you. I think so. All of you. I think everybody's up. Right then. Okay, I want you to join, because here we go with our new single, PUSH.
Give me a P, give me a U, give me an S, give me an H, give me a P, give me a U, give me an S, give me an H.
So I bought that PUSH, and it was Jimmy Jermaine again doing the voice.
Give me a P, give me a U, give me an S, give me an H, give me a P, give me a U, give me an S, give me an H. You gotta jump start, play your part.
And on the B side, a track called Who's Your Best Mate, and an actor playing IQ.
I'll tell you all my secret of why I can't go wrong. Every time I meet someone, I just sing them this song. Who's your best mate? Who's your best mate? Who's your best mate? It's me, IQ. Shake my hand, shout, how do you do? Now who's your best mate? IQ. IQ! Hit me with that bass, boy.
So he then got his own, and these were performed in the shows. So you had the Push Button Click song at the beginning. If IQ did his own bit on his own, at some point, he said, should we sing a song, just me and you? And then he'd sing Who's Your Best Mate? It's me, IQ, and you'd shout it out.
Listen, every time I come on, I'm going to say, who's your best mate? And you're going to shout out IQ. What are you going to shout out? IQ! Who's your best mate?
and then you finished with PUSH. So you had a beginning song and an end song by this time. So I was a real fan, as you can tell.
Yes.
You know.
Still get that
A
feeling.
bit obsessed. Call it Asperger's syndrome if you wish.
What else did you do?
So I wrote to Jean. I got the address, Jean Wren Productions, and because I wanted to order a badge, and so I wrote to her in the end and said, "Oh, I absolutely love it." Push button click. So I would have been 16 by now. I remember I telephoned the office. My mother had a lot to say about that.
Yes.
Phone bills and all that. And I remember the secretary was Jackie. It may have been Jackie Gould or Gould. I can't remember. But I had a big chat with her, a good 20-minute chat, ran the phone bill up. And she said to me, she said, "Oh, Jean, she talks about you sometimes. You know, you're one of the biggest fans." And I used to come up with ideas of, why don't you do a push-button click spiral hat? And why don't you do a push-button click mug? You know, all these collectible things. And Jean said about me, according to Jackie, that she used to say, "That lad's going to be a millionaire one of these days."
Has it happened yet?
Not as yet. I'm working on it, though, because I kept coming up with these marketing ideas. You know, I didn't think that's what they were. I just thought...
To you, it was just to add fun
I used to
what they were
I'd see a
doing.
kid wearing a spiral hat with a design on it,
Yeah.
and think you could put the push-button click logo on that. Have a push-button click mug. But they said it wasn't... As I remember, the reply said it's not cost-effective, so they couldn't afford to do it at that time. Then things moved into... I wrote to... Jimmy Germain. I wrote to him as well. I wrote to Jimmy Germain, care of Jean Wren, and said, you know, why are you doing an impersonation of Cliff Richard?
Well, I've got the brains and I've got the muscle.
And
But he was chuffed.
he wrote back and said, "I'm not doing an impersonation of Cliff Richard. That's how I actually sound." And I wanted to know who the other male voice was doing the backing vocals. Jay was his wife doing the girl part, but there was another voice on it doing the backing vocal, and it was actually himself. He had his voice changed electronically, so it was pitched lower.
Click, you do the push button, push button, push button, click. Put on a style, curl up your lip. Take this advice, take this tip. Get into the groove and do the push button, click. Oh yeah.
So I was fascinated, all that detail, you know, I was fascinated by that. And then he actually really did sound like that. So I wrote to him, and then I learned that they were doing, they'd managed to get into one of the theatres in London, so they were branching out. They were going to do a version of Super Ted, which was very popular at the time. I think John Pertwee did the voice on the cartoon on television. So they were doing a stage version of Super Ted. I was told, if you come to London and see it, you can go backstage and meet the actors. You can, you know, it was a guest. You know, I was being treated like a VIP because I'm such a fan of the push button click. There was also talk of me being in one of the cliques when I was old enough. You know, I didn't go to drama school or anything, but they knew I loved it. You know, if you're going to cast somebody in this thing,
You need someone with a bit of passion
if somebody
for it.
loves it, they'll never let you down, will they?
Yeah.
You know? And I certainly wasn't hip, cool, and neat like Push Button Pete. I didn't have the hair, and so I see myself, or saw myself, as being possibly IQ. I was tall and thin. I had the face for it. I could play I could have played the fool. You know, I could have been that character. So I look back on that now and I think, you know, could I have?
Yeah.
I was a very shy lad, you know, moving away from my mum and living at Butlins on my own and not knowing anybody, and that may have put a stop to it, possibly. But had I have conquered the shyness, could I have then become an actor? We'll never know. But it's one of those things that way it was offered to me, and had they still been around, you know, I
You would have at
might
least
well have took them up on
tried.
that. I certainly would have gone down to have met them all, certainly. And if that had fired me up, maybe I could have been in the push button click when I was like 19, 20, thereabouts. So then we decided we were going on holiday with my dad then, the following year, 87, and we decided we're going to have a change. We've done Pwllheli 3 years on the run. Let's do Skegness. So we went to Skegness, and I, in advance, wrote to the push button click in Skegness, "I'm coming!"
On my way.
And I got a reply from this gentleman, I can't remember his real name, but he called himself the Major in the thing. And he wrote back and said, well, we're very much looking forward to meeting you, but I have to tell you, Jean Wren Productions have gone out of business. So this is the last ever, this is it, you know, the last ever Push Button Click. So I went there, and the drums are gone, so it's back to a plinky plonky synthesizer. And they'd also got rid of the plot device of Video Vera taking you to the stories. So they did the Push Button Click song, and then it was just a pantomime.
So it was almost winding down itself.
It was already gone, really, and I was very disappointed in that, as it wasn't it.
No,
you know,
because it was the format that had made it so different.
That's
and
why
so special.
I loved it. I wouldn't have gone to every show if it was just pantomimes. So you had this weird thing of the guy called Push Button Pete and IQ and Keeley, and then they go into Jack and the Beanstalk, and he's suddenly Jack. There's no explanation for the change. You know, it's not someone who's become a character, or quantum leaped into Jack and become Jack. So I didn't like that at all. I was disappointed the drums had gone, and they were also acting the goat and messing about a lot. And I actually complained to them. I met them up later, and I said, you know, you're not taking it seriously. And one of them said to me, it was not only was it the last Push Button Click, you know, shows. It was also the last week of the season, so they were at the end of their working contracts.
And they knew that the end was nigh, really, didn't they?
And one of them said, what you've got to understand is this is a theatre tradition, that on the last show, they do ham it up a bit and act the goat. It's a tradition. And I said to him, I appreciate that, but this isn't the last show. If you did it the last show at the end, fair dues. But I said, to me, Monday or Saturday when we arrive, that's the first show of a week's worth of shows. And the girl who played Keeley, I think she was called Shirley Moore or Shirley Moon. I remember she was Keeley in the previous year at Pathelli, and had been reassigned to this Skegness one as a self. She was playing the older woman parts now. So she was called Shirley, so she signed the autograph as Shirley. So she said to me, out of earshot from the others, I appreciate what you're saying, I'm sorry that they're not taking it seriously. That to you, this is the start of a week's holiday. So it came to an end. I knew that in the last show on the Friday, they used to have this thing where they'd do the Push Button Click song and then do it again and get all the mums and dads up to embarrass them. And they'd get them all pointing across the tummies and doing the actions to embarrass them for the sake of entertaining the children. So I said, are you going to do that this year? And they said, oh, yeah, we'll finish with that. I said, as soon as it's the very last Push Button Click ever, can I sing it? So credit to them. At the very end, I went up with the mums and dads. I was handed the microphone by Push Button Pete, it was called Kirk, I think, a blonde fella called Kirk. And I sang the song at the very end. And they had this thing, and being a naive 17-year-old, they didn't see this coming at all. They had this thing running through the whole of the show. The worst singer will get a custard pie in his face. So at the very end, when I go, get into the groove and do the push button click, splat, 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 and I was covered in custard pies, all these plates stuck to my head. And that was the end of it. That was the end of the push button click. And so I got in there in the very
just at the
end.
last bit. So, following on from the complete demise of it, what happened to any of the people next? Do you know what they went on to?
Well, I know that Kirk, who played that Push Button Pete, he was on New Faces, the precursor to the X Factor and Britain's Got Talent, was New Faces in the 80s, presented by Marty Kane, possibly. I think, Marty Kane, she presented it. And so it was a talent show. And Kirk went on with a band the following week. He told us that he was going to go on it, and he didn't win his heat. So what happened to him after that? Who knows? Gone forever, as far as I'm concerned. Unless he has manifested, since, and I just don't know it's him. Jimmy Jermaine was one of the original Push Button Petes in the shows. I now know, which is why he was chosen to do that record, and his uncanny similarity to Cliff Richard. He was chosen to be the voice on the record. There was a TV show called Stars in Their Eyes, where people dressed up as their favourite singer And it's kind of like karaoke, but on a grand scale.
Yes.
And also, a lot of the people who've won these things have then gone on to make a living as tribute acts. You know, there's a guy who plays Freddie Mercury now who tours all over the world because Freddie's gone, and if you want to see Queen, and if you get musicians who can play it properly,
that's it. If you're good enough,
and he can match him just about, then if you want to see Queen, that's the only way you're going to see them. Well, Cliff Richard, you know, this Jimmy Germain went on Stars in Their Eyes as Cliff Richard, and was so uncannily similar in looks, especially gets the hair arranged, and the glasses on, and the way he looked in the 80s, and that voice. It's no surprise at all he won his heat in that. I think he got into the final, didn't win the final, but he now tours. He tours Britain and Europe, you know, as Cliff Richard, and in I think it was the year 2000 thereabouts. My brother was working in a hotel, and Jimmy Germain was playing this hotel as Cliff Richard. So Jimmy Germain's coming, you know, and he's quite, to the Cliff Richard fans, they know him. They know he's famous because he's the best tribute act that there is. If you love Cliff Richard, you know, this guy is as close as you're going to get. So I went along, and I think I had a note left with him, so we give it to him when he arrives, so he knows I'm here. And he came on, did the Cliff Richard show. It was, you know, all these middle-aged ladies loved every minute of it. And all I could think was, "Hiya, kids, push button here," when I saw him. And then he went, after the show, he got freshened up and came back down for a drink. And it was a real joy, actually, because although he's not famous, you know, in the great sort of scheme of things in the entertainment world, he is famous as the best tribute act for Cliff Richard. And to me, he's Push Button Pete. So I was the year 2000, I was 30 then. So I'd finally met him, and he told me that he said, to this very day, he said, you'll get people of my age coming up to him with the Push Button Click record that they bought at Butlins years ago, and will you sign my Push Button Click record for it? And he says they're still bringing them to him. So although I'm the only one who made offstage recordings, I'm one of the very few that's got photographs of a few of them. There are a lot more folk out there that remember it fondly. You know, it was an important part of their holiday and of their childhood.
And sort of, what about any of the others?
The production people. Well, Jean Wren is now called Jean Picton. I tracked her down. I think she's living in France now, and she's an artist, I think. Living in France, so she's not, as far as I know, not involved in the entertainment world at all now. Nigel Wren, who produced the records and would have had a hand in the shows, certainly in the creation of them, he's on Facebook. Found him on Facebook. There's a Push Button Click Facebook page. There's about 20 people who remember of that. So it was a joy to find that and him, and it was a joy for him to find us.
Yeah, that there were people out there that still remembered
this eccentric thing, you know, and loved it and remembered it fondly. So Nigel Wren, I tracked down Paul Goodman, who wrote the Push Button Click song, and he's living in America. I'm assuming he's still a composer and you know, has moved on from the Push Button Click song, but he was thrilled to have found someone from like 20 years previous. This song he wrote for a Butlins pantomime group, and he's living in America now, and I have a correspondence with him every now and then. And Andy Parsons is the only other person I've come across who loves it as much as I do. And I hope I get this right. I think he's in Australia. I'm sure. I remember I got some of my offstage recordings and copied them and posted them to him. I think he's in Australia. And they have, I don't go to these things, but the real Butlins aficionados, I think there are only 3 centres left in the whole country. It's declined since things like Centre Parks came along. And they've kind of upgraded it as best they can. I think the red coats and all that it's not quite as it was. And certainly they don't say things like Heidi High anymore. But there is one centre where it is pretty much as it was. It looks like Heidi High, and they have these weekends where they will have the red coats and they will do the knobbly knees competition. And this guy in Australia, I think he comes over you know,
Just to relive those moments.
and we'll have a weekend there. And there's hundreds of them pack the place out and relive the memories of their childhood, really.
Yeah.
If you want a more modern one, go to one of the other centres. But this particular one is designed to be like the ones from
like it was you remembered.
60s, 70s, 80s. Yeah, reliving your childhood. And the ones who go to it, they love it. I was asked, you know, if Jimmy Jermaine could be persuaded to sing the Push Button Click song at one of these things, will you go? Yeah. I was like, I might do.
Another custard pie in the face.
Yeah, I think it would be brilliant if they revived it and modernise it. Like I said, the digital click. You know, if they were to revive it, it would be brilliant as a television programme for you know, children's BBC or children's ITV. If they were to use the format, you couldn't call the robot Video Vera.
It'd have to be DVD Dora.
I like it. Are you listening, Gene Wren? We've got something here. I think it could be turned into a television programme. You could modernise the songs. Because the songs are of their time, you know, like when he says King of the Video, Prince of the Machine, he's talking about video games, the things
but
that
the concept, children interacting and having fun and just being a bit inventive.
Those rules, rule number 1, fun, rule number 2, we don't like school, you keep
I think
those.
that would still be very popular.
Oh, yes. and the idea, as a television programme with cheap computer graphic effects, you know, the price of it's come down, the cost of doing effects like that. You could have a thing that starts off either in a theatre or, you know, in front of an audience, and then to do the hold on to the hats thing and be transported into a live action drama with songs, you know, musical pantomime, and then come back to the theatre, so that the audience in the theatre are involved and the viewer is involved as well. You could do a lot with it. You can market it really well.
And these days you probably would get the caps and the mugs.
You get the caps and the mugs. They release the single as a download or as a CD single, a chart. You know, they would market it so that children would want to buy the thing, and they would probably have push button clicks that go out to theatres locally. You could use it as a teaching tool, couldn't you? If you want to get certain things across to children, do it.
It would be a great sort of drama group type of. You know, encouraging children to
and
take
the children
part.
would know it's not the one off the telly, but they'd know what it was. And I think there's room for it being revived. It's as a television programme, certainly. Yeah, I'd love to be involved in that.
You never know.
Yeah, but I've got a feeling that's like me wanting to be an actor. It's highly unlikely. But yeah, fond memories.
Give yourself a big cheer! Give yourself another big cheer! Give yourself an even bigger cheer! Okay, listen kids, there's one last rule in the click which goes like this. If you're being met here, stay here, and don't move till the lights come on. So shut up! We're not done it yet, hang on.
So you've got to listen to that very important kid.
Very
You know what you're
important.
walking about, do we?
Very important. This time we'll do it for real.
Right.
If you're being met here, stay here, and don't move till the lights come on.
Get them